It was almost sunset. In a modest house on the outskirts of Ismailia, the smell of food filled the air, the call to prayer was near, and laughter echoed around the dining table. The father was setting the table, the mother serving the kofta, and the little girl was giggling softly. Everything felt warm, safe, ordinary. But minutes later, the laughter stopped. The father lay on the ground. The mother screamed, and the siblings twisted in pain, while the only daughter sitting among them stood still in the middle of the room, staring at them in eerie silence. A silence more terrifying than any scream. What really happened at that dinner table? Was it fate? Or a crime planned quietly by someone no one could ever imagine? I'm Adam, and before we begin this story that shook the city of Ismailia, hit like and subscribe, because this story isn't just a tragedy. It's a catastrophe that began with Kofta and ended with a silent death. It was a calm night. The streets were quiet, except for the sound of the evening prayer. But at Ismailia General Hospital, the emergency doors burst open suddenly. 4 members of the same family were rushed in, their faces pale, bodies trembling, their pulse fading with every second. And the girl who came with them stood there not crying, not speaking, but her eyes said something strange, as if she had seen death, or perhaps caused it. Doctors rushed to run tests, and within minutes the results struck like lightning. Poison, a deadly one. But the strangest part, only the 3 who had eaten were poisoned. The girl, completely fine. Let's go back in time, to the year 2012, in a small neighborhood called Esbet El-Suli in El-Manayef. There lived a girl named Shaima, 10 years old. Innocent, quiet, full of laughter. She lived in a simple home with her father, a laborer, her mother, a farm woman, and 2 older brothers who worked as employees. The house was often empty, everyone at work, leaving Shaima alone most of the day. But nearby lived a man named Uncle Fathi, 59 years old. He lived alone, always sitting outside his house, a cup of tea in his hand, and a smile that never left his face. Shaima adored him. She'd visit him every day, play and laugh, and he'd buy her sweets, treating her like his granddaughter. Her parents didn't worry. They thought he was just a kind old neighbor. Years passed, and Shaima grew up. Her father's tone began to change every time he saw her near Uncle Fathi, until one day he sat her down and said firmly, "Shaima, enough. Uncle Fathi is a good man, but it's time to stop visiting him." The words were simple, but they cut deep. From that day on, Shaima fell silent. Her face changed, her eyes turned cold, and her voice disappeared. Something inside her broke, and something darker began to take its place. Ramadan, 2016. Dinner was ready. The kofta was hot, the house filled with laughter. Everyone sat down to eat, but Shaima said she didn't like meat, so she ate something else alone. Minutes later, chaos. The father collapsed. The mother screamed. Her brothers clutched their stomachs in agony. The noise was so loud that neighbors rushed out of their homes, terrified. They pounded on the door, and when Shaima opened it, she was panting, her eyes filled with tears, and she cried out, "Help! My family is dying." They rushed inside, and the sight was horrific. Everyone was on the floor, screaming, convulsing, while the girl stood aside, watching in silence. The family was rushed to the hospital. Doctors first thought it was food poisoning. But when investigators questioned Shaima, her answers were unsettling. She said she didn't eat the kofta because she didn't like it. Just one sentence. But it changed everything, because when the forensic report arrived, it confirmed that the poison was inside the kofta, the food everyone had eaten, except her. From that moment, everything changed. The little girl who had been crying in fear became the prime suspect, but the real shock came when a single name slipped from her lips. A name that hadn't been heard in the neighborhood since the day of the tragedy. Uncle Fathi, the man who always smiled, the man no one had seen since that night. Was he the one behind it all? Was Shaima just his pawn? Or was there a darker secret no one had even imagined? Whatever it was, what came next would turn this case from a mystery into a crime that Egypt would never forget. Since she was a young teen, Shaima had always felt like a stranger inside her own home. Loneliness was her closest companion, and affection was something she only dreamed of. Her father was strict, his words were commands, and his voice brought fear more than safety. Her mother was drowned in work, too busy to listen or even look her in the eyes. Shaima longed for a hug, a kind word, any trace of warmth, but the house was as dry as stone. And in the middle of that emptiness, Uncle Fathi appeared. The neighbor who saw her every day hanging the laundry or buying something from the corner store. At first, he was just kind. He smiled, asked about her day, and treated her gently. But over time, his looks changed. There was something uneasy behind them, something that made her heart tighten. Fathi was an older man, living alone, and he understood very well that Shaima needed care and attention. He used that emptiness in her life to get closer step by step. He brought her small gifts, chocolate, asked if she needed help, and spoke to her with fake tenderness words far beyond her age. Shaima, who had never been loved or noticed before, believed him. She started to feel that someone finally saw her, listened to her, cared for her. Before she realized it, he became the only person who made her feel safe, the kind neighbor everyone trusted. But she didn't know there was a much darker side hiding behind his smile. The last threads of the story had finally started to come together. Fathi asked Shaima to come over to his house. He told her it was a place far from people's eyes, far from the watchful gaze of her parents who were trying to keep them apart. And of course, Shaima believed him. She didn't even stop to ask why or where this would lead, because in her eyes, he was safety. She didn't know that this was the true beginning of the end. That day, as she sat with him, Fathi began to slowly plant poison in her mind. He told her that her family was the reason for her misery, that they hated him, that they were tearing her away from him, and that he could never live with her as long as they were alive. Then, in a cold tone, he said the sentence that changed everything. The solution is for them to disappear. Shaima froze. His voice echoed in her head like the whisper of a devil. She tried to protest, but Fathi didn't give her the chance. He leaned closer and said with desperate passion, "I love you, Shaima. I can't live without you, but as long as they're alive, we'll never be together." Those words were the venom that drowned the mind of a 4-year-old girl, naive, lonely, searching for love, for warmth, for a hug. She believed him, and she agreed. At that moment, Fathi began to execute his plan. He pulled out a small plastic bag containing a deadly substance. He said, "Put it in their food. No one will ever know. Then I'll come for you. and we'll live together like we promised." He extended his hand with the bag, and she took it with trembling fingers, not realizing that she was holding death itself. She returned home, with fear following her every step. The next morning, when her mother entered the kitchen to prepare breakfast, Shaima followed her, talking, smiling, distracting her. And in a brief moment of carelessness, she opened the bag and poured the poison over the minced meat, the same meat that was about to be made into kofta for her family. She left the kitchen and let fate do the rest. Hours later, the entire family was poisoned. During the interrogation, when they confronted her with the truth, Shaima said with chilling calmness that she felt no regret. She said, "If Fathi asked me to kill again, I'd do it. He's the only one who loved me and cared for me." Her words were colder than death itself. After her confession, Fathi was arrested, and when they searched his home, they found another bag of the same poison. Every piece of evidence screamed, "He's the criminal." Even his phone betrayed him, full of photos, videos, and scandals. When they confronted him with the evidence, he didn't deny it. He said quietly, "Yes, I told her to poison her family. They wanted to separate us, and I love her madly." He confessed that he bought the poison and handed it to a 4-year-old girl, asking her to kill her own family. A sick love, and a deadly stupidity. When the mother found out, she collapsed. She couldn't believe that her own daughter, the one she raised with her own hands, was the reason her family was gone. She kept replaying the scenes in her mind, over and over, unable to grasp how it all happened right under her nose. The investigation revealed that the relationship between Fathi and Shaima had lasted 4 years. 4 years, and she never noticed. That realization shattered her completely. In August 2017, the court delivered its verdict. Death by hanging for Fathi. 15 years in prison for Shaima, as she was underage. And that was the end of the story. But the message still hurts. They used to say, "A neighbor is a protector." But they also said, "Be cautious, trust can kill." Watch your children, who they talk to, who enters their lives, whose words they listen to. Because sometimes, a single word can kill faster than poison. And with that, our story ends. But the questions remain. How many other Shaimas are out there right beside us and we don't even see them? Good night. And we'll meet again in another crime. A story stranger than fiction.